So we're talking about the health effects from human trials of kombucha.
Shouldn't we give an intro about
what kombucha is?
And why are we talking about kombucha? Oh, because it's right here.
So, in essence, kombucha is fermented tea. And it's not a new thing, but it's seen a trend. It's going through a resurgence, I think, the last few years. I've been seeing it a lot in health-related shops and restaurants and whatnot. So
I feel like I remember back in like the maybe late 90s, early 2000s, I became aware of it, and it became popular in the health community in the US.
Maybe the US is like...
And I think now it's started to come back again.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know.
I wasn't... I was alive then, but maybe I wasn't paying attention. Also, the US is usually ahead with... I feel the US is... The health-conscious people in the US are way more up-to-date than...
You could say that.
Yeah. So my interest in it started when I decided to make it myself. Basically, it's hot where I live, and in the winters I tend to drink a lot of coffee and tea. But in the summers, I wanted something more refreshing. And I used to drink a lot of soda, and I didn't want to go back to that. So I found out about kombucha around that time, and also found out for some reason how expensive it was. And then I looked into what it was and how easy it would be to make it. So I've been making it for the last year and a half, something like that.
Okay.
As you can...
I can see. Homemade kombucha.
How have you been enjoying it?
It's really good. It is definitely refreshing.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't even know it was tea. I knew it was fermented, but I had no idea that it started out as tea, basically.
Oh, okay.
So, and you can't really taste that it's tea. You just...
Right. If you don't know it, if you don't look for... Especially when it's flavored like this. So this is beetroot. I add just a tiny bit of beetroot and ginger, and it changes the taste a lot. I wouldn't say it tastes like any one of those things, but it tastes like, because it tastes kind of like a soda, I would say. It's, even though I let it ferment long enough for there to be not much sugar left in it. By the time we're consuming it, I think there's barely any sugar in it.
Yeah.
So, okay, I guess this is where we get into the health stuff, because, I wanted it because it was less unhealthy than sodas. But when I read about it, they were touting all these health benefits, mostly due to the probiotics stuff. So I thought, okay, it's even healthy. That's great. I'm not sure what you have prepared. So that's what we've been discussing the past couple of days, and you started looking into the effects. Do I say what I'm expecting to see from this, or?
You mean what health effects you're expecting from kombucha, or what you expect me to present?
What I'm expecting you to reveal.
Maybe say both.
I'm expecting that the probiotic health benefits that are, I don't want to say advertised, but are touted by the kombucha community is either non-existent or largely exaggerated. And I'm expecting obviously some people like it more sweet, and then that means there's more sugar in it, and that can be bad. But I think in general it's still going to be better than soda. That's not I don't think that's a comparison to be made. And if I anticipate a downside, it would be it's because it's acidic, and I'm expecting some negative effects on teeth.
Teeth, okay.
But that's about it.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. I think first we should say what exactly is in a base kombucha. So without the flavors, just
Right.
what do we consider just a base kombucha? And we said tea is in it, of course.
Yeah.
And then what else?
Well, you can make it from green tea, black tea, and oolong, was it? Right. That's less common, I think. So I use green and black tea and sugar. So that's pretty much it. It's just It's just the culture, tea, and sugar.
Yeah.
And the idea is that when it eats the sugar and some of the nutrients from the tea, there'll barely be any sugar left in it usually.
Right. And that depends on the fermentation length.
Yes.
How much sugar's left over?
Yeah, the fermentation length, the temperature, how much of tea to kombucha you started with, because you use kombucha to make more kombucha. Essentially, the kombucha is the live culture, and when you dump it in a bunch of tea, I'm simplifying it, but when you dump it in a bunch of tea, it eats it and turns it into more kombucha.
Okay. So basically kombucha is just tea and probiotics. The basic.
Sugar.
And sugar. Yeah. In varying amounts.
Yeah. And very commonly you add flavor in the second phase of the fermentation.
Yeah.
And that's optional.
So I'm sure if we want to be careful about the health effects of kombucha, I'm sure you can think of some problems already with defining like a clear experiment. Like, is it the combination of those things? Is it the tea, or is it the probiotics, or is it the additional things that you add to it? Like,
sure. How much does that matter though?
That's a good question.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I'm assuming that in the human trials they mentioned what kind of kombucha they used.
Yeah, usually they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's something.
Yeah. And I think usually it's just a base kombucha. I think that most of the time they don't want to add more things.
Layers of complication to the equation.
Yeah, because then...
I will just say, though, that I follow a lot of the guides regarding how much flavoring I put in there. And like 90% of this is kombucha, 10% of it is flavor. So like if 10% of the flavor is going to cause some adverse
or beneficial effect, but like the ginger, one of them had turmeric in it, right, and that has been studied widely and has a lot of probable health benefits, which is also a good thing that it's just in there. But it could just be that it's that,
Right.
not the base kombucha.
Okay.
It's just a complication in there.
So it's good that they're using pure kombucha to do the trials.
Probably. Yeah. Makes it easier initially, then, if you could do as many studies as you wanted to,
Test every single flavor.
Yeah. But of course, that's not going to happen. All right. Should we get into
Sure.
the research? This is not medical advice now.
Isn't it?
I'm not a doctor. Okay, so of course I made a presentation that will be available. The slides will be available in the link below. And with this presentation, I've focused on, as much as possible, the research on humans.
Mm-hmm.
Because, there's more research on animals and in cell models, but you never know if that translates to humans well.
They gave kombucha to animals?
Yeah, like rats and...
Interesting.
Yeah. And diabetic rats, they give it to.
Oh.
Yeah. But we're focusing more, as much as possible, on the human trials here.
All right.
So I've got a summary in the beginning, which is, first, just the potential benefits seem to be mostly related to glycemic control, which is controlling your blood sugar, which could be good, especially if you are diabetic.
Oh.
That one, to me, looked the most promising.
Really?
Actually. Yeah.
And this is coming from the kombucha, not like...
It's the kombucha.
Yeah. Okay.
So that looked good. Also, some potential gut health or gastrointestinal relief of symptoms, but that seemed to be a bit less clear, and not as many studies in humans. And it's hard to ask like a rat if their stomach feels better. So
Right.
some potential anti-inflammatory and antioxidant activity. That's probably from the tea aspect of it, but that needs more study, basically. Okay. Also some liver support, but that seemed to be pretty strong effect in animals, and there's just no research on humans yet.
Okay, there's none, not like in animals it was observed, but not in humans. They're just not been done yet.
Yeah, it just hasn't been done. Not that I could find.
In general, it's something that doesn't seem to be that much research on.
Kombucha.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And especially in humans.
Is there more stuff happening, or is it kind of fizzling out?
It seemed like it was slowly more coming, but not much really. Like most of the studies, there were some from Brazil, one from Russia. Like I couldn't find any like really well-regarded institutions or universities studying kombucha.
Okay.
Maybe it's just not seen as that important a thing.
Sure.
And there's also, I think, a lot of carryover from the research on tea and the research on probiotics that maybe people just say, just look at the tea or look at the probiotic research. Right. So, yeah.
Okay.
There's that. So, yeah, as I was saying, the human randomized controlled trials seem to be growing slowly. Okay. But it's still limited in the number of studies out there and what they're studying on the kombucha side. And it's mostly, the data that we will look at is mostly just like smaller studies, pilot studies, like exploratory analysis. And there is a lot more animal and mechanistic research, but I try not to focus on that. There are some adverse effects, mostly mild GI symptoms. So like stomach upset, bit of nausea, nothing serious in the research studies. However, there have been some cases that like the CDC analyzed that they say might be related to homebrew kombucha, might not be. It's not like 100% sure. And there were actually some deaths maybe related, but it's with anything like homemade that has to do with fermentation, like
right,
you have to be careful,
right?
And if you're not, if your stuff is all dirty, like
sure,
bad things can happen.
I'm sure some people out there are being sloppy with their procedure. I am I'm keeping that in there. Like, I'm very more than usual when I'm making kombucha. I'm cleaning the kitchen, all the utensils, and disinfecting everything. And so mainly because I've seen horror stories on the subreddit with mold and stuff. So I'm very careful with that. Yeah. But I can see how people can just get and I have some tips. Maybe I can share those later on how to avoid mold and such. I mean, it's
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So first, let's go through a few studies on glycemic control. So controlling blood sugar. And this was one study done in 2023 looking at kombucha tea as an anti-hyperglycemic agent in humans with diabetes. So if anybody's diabetic, it's possible it might help. It was randomized, double-blind crossover study. So that means they had the same person try the placebo and then later try the kombucha without knowing which was which.
Okay.
Ideally. And they did find that in the end, kombucha did lower the average fasting blood glucose levels at 4 weeks compared to the baseline, but placebo didn't. So it looks like it's potentially positive for blood sugar levels.
Okay. Wow.
That was in diabetic people. It was a small study, 12 subjects, still got a p-value less than 0.05, so it's still significant. And the numbers that's a pretty strong decrease, 164 to 116.
Yeah.
That is significant. So it's definitely, at least according to this study,
isn't that
something significant.
Strange, given that it might have a little bit of sugar in it?
Yeah, but it seems like whatever else is in kombucha is counteracting that.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's just one study, but
positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and pretty clear for this,
I
think. So that's one. There was another one that wasn't actually this one kind of showed something potentially negative with the kombucha on blood sugar.
Okay.
It was a study. I think it wasn't specifically looking at fasting insulin as like the main endpoint, but it was one of them that they looked at, and it looked like it increased fasting insulin, which is like the hormone that your pancreas produces to deal with the blood sugar. Mm-hmm. So if that's higher, it's generally not a good thing. Mm-hmm. But also, this was a smaller study, and I tried to figure out how much sugar was in the kombucha because I thought maybe it was just a one with like 30 grams of sugar per small amount. But all it said was it was 16 ounces of a commercial kombucha beverage.
Okay.
So it's unclear.
Right, that could be anything.
Yeah, I just wanted, wanted to show what I found. And yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think if I recall, the previous study said 12 subjects. Mm-hmm. So, but isn't that one smaller than?
The previous one was smaller.
Okay.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that because this study had more participants that it's like better evidence necessarily.
Okay.
because the previous study did that crossover design, and this one isn't. It's just a control versus control versus the kombucha.
All right.
So it's unclear.
Okay.
It's just another data point that maybe my guess is that it could be just due to the increase in the sugar in this one, but it's unclear.
It's a guess.
Yeah. I guess the only other point that I'll make in this one was that they looked at lots of other health markers, and it's just an exploratory study on these other health markers. So I don't know. Don't take any conclusions from this, like, is
Right.
for sure. Okay. This next study, which looked at the glycemic index and insulin index so they had subjects consume a standard carbohydrate meal. I think it was rice with some other stuff. And then they had some people have kombucha with that meal. Some people have a diet soda with that meal, and some people have a diet lemonade. So you got 3 different groups there. And the diet soda and the diet lemonade didn't have any sugar in it.
Okay.
But the kombucha had like about 2 grams of sugar added to it.
That's pretty low, yeah.
Yeah, so almost negligible.
Yeah.
And this study's interesting because they had a not continuous glucose monitor, but they checked the glucose at the time of the meal, and then 30 minutes later, 60 minutes later, 90 minutes later, so you can see the curve.
Yeah.
And this chart is that curve. So you can see the orange line, that's the rice meal and kombucha.
Yeah.
And the blue and green are the rice meal plus soda water, rice meal plus diet lemonade.
Wow, you can see it very clearly that it kind of suppressed.
It suppressed the jump, the increase. The black line is just a glucose solution. It's like kind of what they use to test blood sugar levels usually. And that's only glucose, like pure sugar. So that one you'd expect to be higher. But yeah, it's clear that the kombucha added to the rice meal like significantly lowers the rise in plasma glucose.
Right. But then about an hour later, or 2 hours later is the same.
Which time point?
Let's say 90 minutes.
Yeah. And yeah, you'd expect that eventually that they would come back to.
Okay.
Yeah, around an hour and a half. But it's generally considered a bad thing to have a spike in the insulin.
I was about to ask that.
Yeah. Because like look at the mean glucose solution, the black bar, the black line.
Yeah.
See how that spikes really high, but then it goes
even lower.
It goes even lower at the end, below like the baseline. And that's like when you get to hypoglycemia.
Okay.
Like when your blood sugar is too low, and then you're like, oh, I need more sugar.
Okay. Yeah.
So generally, you want a gradual rise when you eat something, and that seems to be exactly what the kombucha did.
That's cool.
And rice is rice generally increases blood sugar significantly. So that was interesting. I really...
So according to this, I could say not only is it better than soda, it's even better than a diet soda where it doesn't have any sugar in it. At least for this particular effect.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a significant difference. I have the y-axis is in millimoles per liter. And I think that's the units they use mostly in Europe, but in the US we use milligrams per deciliter. So I kind of converted it on the if you see the bullet point there.
Okay.
So that increase.
Okay.
So you see the kombucha increases by 36 lemonade, and the lemonade's 56, soda 65, about. And those are significant differences. So if you like, I don't know what the baseline was, but let's say it was like 100, which is a bit high, but for math.
Right, yeah.
Let's say you go from 100 to 136 at 30 minutes. That's okay. That's considered like still pretty good blood glucose levels. But if you go from 100 to 165, that's getting into like, you don't want to be up there for really for that long.
When we say baseline, would it have been better to not have kombucha with it? Would that have been the 0?
The 0 is just like the normalized blood glucose level of the participants.
Okay.
So it's just a way to compare across participants the change from their...
Here's what I'm getting at. According to this, kombucha was better than lemonade or soda.
Yep.
Did they also measure not having anything? Just rice?
Not in this study.
Okay.
No. That would have been interesting, actually. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Okay.
My guess is that it would be higher than the kombucha. It would maybe be similar to the other two. That's my guess. I don't know. I also had thought, what if they had just used rice meal and just regular water?
Yeah.
But I think they used the soda water and diet lemonade because they are closer to kombucha, closer to the taste, and
lemonades are supposed to be healthy. Like,
I mean, it's just sugar and lemon. Like,
if you don't put the sugar in it, which they didn't.
Right, it's diet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I like that study because it's it's clear. You can watch the rise, and you could even if you're diabetic, you can do this study at home and just test it yourself, which would be fun to do.
I worry about your definition of fun.
I still have a continuous glucose monitor at home. I should have brought it and tested. All right. Anyway, so just the conclusion, and I didn't mention this effect was for healthy adults. Okay. It wasn't for diabetics, so that might be different for diabetic people. It might even be more pronounced that the rice meal with soda water and diet lemonade would cause the blood glucose to go even higher. So it might even be more of an effect, but that's just speculation. So that was the glycemic control section. Those were the main studies I found. Like there's not more research on humans in that area.
Okay. But that was
some promising effects. Yeah. Gut health. So this will be talking about like gut microbiome and any symptomatic relief from I don't know if your stomach hurts or if you have irritable bowel syndrome or something.
Right.
Things like that. And a bit about the probiotics. So we said kombucha is made of, tea and probiotics. And basically this study looked at changes in the gut microbiome on 30 healthy adults in 8 weeks. And what it found overall was that having kombucha didn't increase the number of species of probiotics in your gut, but the amounts of different ones shifted.
Okay.
Generally, good ones increase. Generally, bad ones decreased, but one of them, lactobacillus, usually is seen as a beneficial one, and that seemed to decrease. But,
Lactobacillus? I like my lactobacillus.
We'll just have some kefir or yogurt or something. But they also measured some blood biomarkers in the humans and inflammation, but those didn't seem to change significantly.
Okay.
So it's unclear, even though the probiotics, changed in their amounts, it's unclear if that does anything clinically to the person. Maybe it would longer term, but it's unclear. So, sorry.
Pretty much what I expected from this. Even maybe slightly more positive than what I expected.
No. Okay.
I mean, you did take away my favorite microbiotic from the lactobacillus.
I kind of like the Weitzmania coagulans. I think that's one of the main ones in kombucha.
Okay.
Yeah, but a lot of this probiotic research, my general read on it is that it seems like they should help. Like, they may support gut lining, reduce inflammation, but it's unclear how much of an effect that really translates in humans to like any clinical markers. So, this study, it was looking at green tea, kombucha, and intestinal health. 10 weeks, 59 participants from 2024. So I've got this here because it was looking more at, if you have problems with digestion or something, did kombucha help? And they looked at a lot of symptoms. They had like a questionnaire for people to fill out with 30 different things. So one problem is that if you look at 30 different things, maybe you'll find something,
By pure chance.
When you look at it, they didn't really find anything clear. They found, because a lot of the differences were, the issue with this study seemed to be that the control group and the kombucha group had different baseline levels of problems with their gut. Like they would have, if you looked at, burping was one of the things they looked at.
Okay.
It seemed like the control group had like higher burps on to start with than the kombucha group, things like that. So maybe they just needed more people or somehow a better way to assess it that's not as subjective.
Right.
But it's a pilot study, you do what you can. So the one thing that they did find that was significantly better in the kombucha group was the improved sensation of not completely emptying the intestine.
Okay.
So so the kombucha improved being able to completely empty your intestine.
Okay. Interesting.
I know. I don't know how real that is, but that's the one that was really significantly different. They did mention also that related to the gut barrier, that it looked like the intestinal permeability and fecal pH worsened only in the control group, which is kind of strange because not sure why that happened anyway, but it didn't worsen in the kombucha group. So it's unclear why that happened.
Right.
So I wouldn't take that as kombucha's better. But maybe more studies needed to be done. Yeah. So I'll show a few of the charts that they have. This is a lot, but if you look at that little one on the far bottom right, that is the difference in not completely emptying the intestine. That's the one that was significantly different.
But just to poke at this, the kombucha group started with a much higher value. Mm-hmm. Could this just be regression to the mean? You didn't see that coming, did you?
Good question. Yes, possibly, but what you do see there is that the change in the 2
It goes
points,
lower.
initial to final, the change was a much more in the kombucha group.
Yeah. All right. And
But-
was that the highest out of everything that they tested? Was that the biggest difference they saw?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the gist of it is, this suggests that kombucha might make your toilet experience more pleasant.
Very, very much might.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they tested so many, many things. And no, it's fine here. They didn't do corrections on the p-values. Like for multiple testing, sometimes you reduce the p-value threshold. It's an exploratory study, so that's fine. But yeah. Okay. This one last study, I think, on gut health just looked at irritable bowel syndrome. It was only 10 days, but it was a randomized controlled trial. But it was pasteurized kombucha and inulin, which is a kind of prebiotic fiber.
Okay.
Which makes it difficult to determine which was which,
Right.
which had the effect. And
Why would they do that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe they wanted to study both.
Okay.
I don't know. But it did find that the stool consistency improved and reduced some incomplete evacuation, which is kind of that thing that they were talking about in the previous study. But I would guess that's probably more due to the fiber.
Right.
That's why I've got, at the end.
Incomplete evacuation. I love the terminology.
I mean, you got to be precise in your
Right.
your words. Yeah. I don't know. I would say the same kind of thing, like for gut health, it's really unclear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I couldn't find anything on inflammatory bowel disease, which is like a much more serious thing than the irritable bowel syndrome, but no human trials on that I found, just anecdotal reports. Some people were just saying, be careful with live cultures if you have inflammatory bowel disease. So like the
Right.
probiotics, just use caution.
Fair enough.
Yeah. As an aside, as a teaching point for learning about scientific research, the most important part of this.
Debatable.
That study that we looked at, which was talking about green tea kombucha,
Yeah.
it stated that kombucha has been associated with decreasing gastrointestinal symptoms in individuals with inflammatory bowel disease.
Yeah.
And it listed that, a citation number 17. But I did just mention that there's no studies on inflammatory bowel disease.
Right.
So I looked at that reference, and that reference was a pilot study on women with irritable bowel syndrome, not inflammatory bowel disease.
Okay.
So, and if you search for kombucha inflammatory bowel disease, you find that study in there that mentions that. And those are two pretty different diseases. Like inflammatory bowel disease is much more severe. Like
I know what IBS is. I had never heard of IBD.
yeah.
And when I saw it earlier, first I also confused it. I thought you were talking about IBS. Okay.
Easy to confuse.
Yeah.
I just point this out because this problem is like in the literature where one study will cite another and say, this study says this.
Right.
And then another study will cite that study. And then it's kind of this network thing. And it does happen. And if you're interested, you can look at the citation I have there that is a study about this citation distortion creating this unfounded authority. And it's interesting. Just whenever you read a citation,
go and check.
try to.
Yeah.
If you want.
If we want people to read more studies, this might put a lot of people off.
It's tough. Nothing simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a simple mistake, though.
Give me two.
Yeah. Okay, almost the last thing, anti-inflammatory effects of kombucha. This study looked at green tea kombucha on inflammation and salivary microbiota.
Okay.
In people with excess body weight. It was 59 subjects. Kombucha didn't help with weight loss or most inflammation markers. They looked at different inflammation markers, but it did blunt one of them significantly. You'll see a similar chart to the ones that we looked at because it's kind of looking at the same kind of study design, where they just had control and kombucha baseline versus final. And it does seem like kombucha decreased this inflammatory marker, and also reduced some other marker of metabolic risk. It's totally unclear if this has any clinical significance.
Okay.
But it is like a step in the research.
Okay.
So first you see if something seems to decrease inflammation, but then does this matter? Not sure.
I'm going to take a step back for a sec.
Yeah.
Are we looking at the green graph? No, I mean the green and purple.
Yeah, the green is the kombucha group. The purple is the control group.
What is that representing?
Basically the amount of this IL-6. It's an inflammatory marker.
So why would it go up without?
Yeah, that's the question. Why did it go up? I don't know. And in the study, they also asked the question, we're not sure why it went up.
Okay.
And it could be something related to losing weight, maybe increases your inflammation temporarily.
Yeah,
it's unclear.
Not sure what to make of this.
Yeah. I think there's no clear conclusion here.
Okay.
It might be nothing. It might
be something.
It's unclear. Yeah. More unclearness. I'm sorry. That was the only one I found on humans.
Okay.
About anti-inflammatory effects. There's a lot more on animals.
Okay.
And cell models, but
is there some kind of a expectation that it has?
Yeah, in animals generally, it seems like there's a beneficial effect on inflammation from kombucha. And
the effects of that is less joint pain and things like that?
Down the line for humans. Is that your question?
Yeah.
That could be, yeah. It could be something like that, yeah.
All right.
That's the hope.
Okay. More research needed.
Yes. Because you can't ask the rats if they're...
Right.
Knee, do they have?
Right.
Ankle, whatever. Yeah.
Their tail.
Okay. On to antioxidant effects, which I think would be mostly related to the tea component of kombucha. Sorry, no human evidence, no direct human randomized controlled trials that measured antioxidant biomarkers, blah, blah, blah. And this was stated in some reviews that we just don't have the evidence yet. But in animals and in vitro, it does seem like there is some reduction in oxidative stress. That's in liver cells.
What is the clinical effects of that?
In liver cells?
I'm just antioxidant effects is a very...
It's a wide thing. It
and
can
quite
mean a lot.
sought after in the supplement.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering why. Like I take stuff that have antioxidant effects.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Practically.
I think this subject has come up a few times, and I think we should do a podcast on it.
Okay.
Because also for myself, like I have this, I have a lot of knowledge that could be better organized.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
We could call it "What the hell is antioxidant effects" or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. I'll just note that it does seem like kombucha enhances the antioxidant effects of tea, the fermentation.
Oh, interesting.
So that seems good. Unclear how much that effect has on humans, if any, or, you know.
Okay.
But yeah, the conclusion is basically looks promising, but no research in humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last thing was just on liver function. Again, no human trials on liver disease or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or elevated liver enzymes. But the animal models do show a strong hepatoprotective effect. That's just liver protection effects in metabolic and toxic injury. So if they like purposely injure the rat's liver and then give it kombucha, it seems better than not doing that.
Not hurting the rat?
I know. I know you say these things and it sounds yeah.
Wait. I thought you meant
Hurt the rat's liver. They like give the rat like some chemical that harms the liver.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Right.
And then they give it kombucha or just like placebo, saline or something.
And the ones that got kombucha did better. Yeah.
I don't know. Should get into the morality of
different
so it's strong evidence that it is good for the liver, but no human studies. I'd say it's probable it could have a beneficial effect, but we don't know yet. Just the last thing, as I mentioned, there were some adverse effects and warning, just generally from the reviews and the research. It's mostly stomach upset, but there were some, you know, serious cases reported of kombucha use, mostly homebrew. And I think it's mostly related to people not being clean with making it.
Yeah.
But also, perhaps even if that and you are drinking a whole lot, maybe
don't.
It's probably fine.
Yeah. But as with anything,
like if you're brewing beer at home, you could have some problems there as well.
Sure.
So yeah, just some cases where it's pretty severe, but it's not like you hear about this often. Like this isn't happening like every day or every week. Like it's like one or two times in the past 30 years. I think
it's pretty telling that one of the cases is from 1995.
Right. And I think that was the most serious one I found.
Yeah.
And then one other one, serious liver injury. But you find these with anything like that. You know. So I'm still drinking your kombucha. I have a conclusion. I think the most interesting and the one that seemed to have the most clear effect was the glycemic control.
Yeah.
Especially if you consume it around having a meal with higher carbohydrates. The other ones, I don't think it's clear. Like if you drink it and you find that you feel better, great. But the research is not there yet.
Okay.
And same with the other gut microbiota, inflammation. We just don't know yet. Yeah, no clinical evidence yet, so not sure. I mean, you definitely could test that yourself.
How?
Well, you can get liver enzyme tests pretty...
Poison myself.
Yeah. Take some chemical that harms your liver.
And then either take kombucha or placebo.
Or do the crossover design, where
Right.
first you take the placebo and then see if your liver gets better. Then wait, hopefully your liver will get better. Then harm it again.
Right.
Have kombucha, see if it gets better at a faster rate.
Right. It's a good thing you mentioned that you're not a doctor at the beginning of the episode, so I can disregard this.
Yeah. And the final thing was, I don't have a problem drinking homebrew kombucha if I trust the source.
Right. That means a lot.
Right. Yeah, that's it. So, and the last thing I wanted to say was that given that kombucha is started as tea, there's a lot more research on tea.
Right.
So I did think of, I could also add the health benefits of tea, of which there are very many, like even possible cognition benefits, possible preventing neurodegeneration, things like that.
I think that's beyond the scope of a kombucha special.
Yeah.
What I noticed as we were going through the different effects is that most of them didn't have enough to make a clear conclusion, but almost every effect you showed leaned towards positive in some way, but there was just not enough data or not enough research. And
it seemed positive or neutral.
Yeah.
There was only that one study.
Yeah.
But
that could be,
that was unclear. Yeah, I agree. And we know what is in kombucha. Generally, tea is regarded as healthy. Fermented, probiotics, good ones are regarded as healthy. There's a lot of evidence for both of those. And what you add to it also is regarded as healthy, like the curcumin, the beetroot powder, juice.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't make sense that it's unhealthy.
Right.
It's just, I guess it's unclear in what specific areas it's benefiting you. Yeah.
Okay, so first I'll quickly tell you a brief of the entire procedure and then my tips on not ending up at the hospital
with liver injury.
Yeah. So essentially, as you said, it's mostly tea, or it starts as tea, and you always need a bit of kombucha to get the culture started. So it is generally done in 2 phases, and the first phase, where you just make some sweet tea with lots of sugar, and you can do it with green tea, black tea, or oolong tea. I use a blend of green and black tea. And then...
Why the blend?
I like the taste better. I started with only green, but once I added black, I really liked how it ended up. It really took it to the next level, I thought. I never tried doing it with just black, but I also like... the health benefits of green tea, and I guess in my mind the kombucha is eating different things from the different teas, because these teas have different nutrients for the culture. So I make a blend 50-50. with lots of sugar, and then every batch I make, I save a bit of kombucha and I add it to the tea. With at least 10% of the solution will be kombucha, 90% will be tea.
And that kombucha is like the probiotics.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just kombucha making more kombucha.
Yeah. Like yogurt kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just leave it there for some days. It varies on how sweet you like it. I leave it slightly more than what is recommended, just to have it be less sweet. Like the kombucha community says, you have to taste it once, like after a week you taste it. If it's sweet, if it's too sweet, you just leave it for another day. And but I don't go by taste. I just I made a formula and then I just go by that.
Do you want to describe the formula?
Basically, I averaged based on the temperature what people were suggesting to keep it as. And
like the room temperature.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I turned that into a formula on depending on how much what ratio of kombucha to tea I used in the first fermentation phase to adjust. And then I plugged that into ChatGPT and it improved it. And like I checked, it was very similar to my line, what it did, but it had a bit more curve in the beginning and at the end. Because like it doesn't matter if it's 45 degrees Celsius outside, it's still not going to be ready in a day.
Right. Yeah.
So so it just made it a little smoother, and I've been using that formula to just, okay, now it's ready. And sometimes I leave it an extra day, it'll be totally fine. Like I've never tasted it and been like, whoa, I waited too long or something. I mean, I'd never left it a month, but it's happened that I've left a few more days than my target, and it's totally fine. In the beginning, when you start, you're like completely obsessed with it because you're worried something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, so once you decide that it's ready, if you want to do it by taste, is the second phase where you bottle it. And the main reason you do that is to make it fizzy, because that's just pleasant.
Yeah, it is nice. Refreshing.
Yeah. I think in the olden days when they used to do it, it wasn't fizzy.
Oh.
But yeah, it's like, pleasant.
Because they didn't seal it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they just drank the fermented thing. So the main purpose of the second phase is to make it fizzy and to flavor it. If you like to do that, which a lot of people do, and it's fun. You experiment, you try new stuff. So once again, I add about 10% juice.
The flavoring?
Yeah. Like I get either in this case, beetroot, which I like it.
It's good.
Carrot's another good one I like. But yeah, people try all sorts of whatever juice they can find. Some people put fruit in there. It doesn't seem that the kombucha can eat through the skin and get through everything that it can when you use a juice. So I just use like a pure extract or juice.
Yeah.
And then I check how much sugar is in the juice that I used. And based on that, I add a little bit more sugar on that. And because the fermentation is still ongoing in the bottle. And then I leave it a few more days. It's recommended to leave it in the bottle 2 or 3 days. But I leave it like 5 or 6 days. And then it's much fizzier. It's just, I've come to like it this way. Obviously, there's all these different inputs you can mess around with and get a slightly different taste. So, of the horror stories I've seen on the subreddit where people are like, oh, I got mold, and it's some pretty disgusting stuff on there. What I've gathered from reading what I can about how to avoid that is, most importantly, use at least 10% of the initial solution as kombucha, at least. Because mold doesn't seem to survive the acidic environment of kombucha.
Oh.
So most of the cases where people are getting mold is because they use too little kombucha to start with. Obviously, it goes without saying that clean your...
Right.
I'm not going to go over that.
Yeah.
Clean your everything. Like,
Yeah.
I clean the jars that they're in. I clean the utensils I'm using. I clean the bottles. And I use a vinegar to disinfect it. A couple other things that I think are important. It seems to mostly come from food. So before I start, I remove all the foods that might still be around the kitchen. Like there's bananas there or something, I put them in the fridge. I just make sure there's no foods lying around. And trash, like don't have open trash near it. I always make sure it's closed, and if I'm gonna throw something away, I'm like quickly careful and throw it away, just to be extra safe. And the final thing I have, the way you start the first phase is, as I said, you make tea, and I boil the tea, like I properly make tea, but you can't dump the kombucha into it right away because it's like boiling hot.
Right.
So you have to wait till it gets to a cooler temperature for the kombucha to survive. And that's about room temperature, a little warmer than that is fine, I think. And it seems that this is the period where the tea is vulnerable to mold, because it takes, in the summers, it takes like, I don't know, it could take 8 hours I make 4 or 5 liter jugs for it to cool down. And then there's no kombucha in it. The environment is pretty inviting to mold.
Right, moist and warm. And
exactly.
Yeah.
So what I do is I put my kombucha jars in a tray, and I fill it up with cold water to speed up the cooling and not give the mold a head start.
Yeah.
And then just in an hour or two, it's already cold enough. I'll just put the kombucha in there, so that
makes sense.
I know it could be interesting. The difference in my expectations on what flavors would work versus what flavors ended up working for me.
Yeah, okay.
So like when I got into this, I thought flavors that I generally like in fruits and juices and smoothies would be what I like in kombuchas. And it just didn't work out that way. Like, I love blueberries.
They're good.
Yeah, but I did not like blueberry kombucha. Or I tried a few different berries. I think I tried blackberries, sea berries, whatever berry I could find, I tried. And my current favorites are beetroot and carrot. I don't even like carrot.
Not even fruits.
Yeah. So what I think is happening, and I don't know if this has been looked into, but I think is interesting, is because when I think about berries, I think about their sweet taste. And my suspicion is that the kombucha culture is eating the sugars from it, the glucose.
Fructose, but yeah.
Fructose.
I mean, it's mostly fructose and fruit sugar. Yeah.
Whereas, I don't know, maybe beetroot and carrot taste more like what you would expect carrot juice to be like, and a bit more like...
I generally don't like carrot juice or carrots that much.
Yeah.
But I liked that carrot one. That was good.
Yeah.
So maybe some other...
Just to clarify, the carrot you had a few days ago that I made.
Yeah. Not in general.
This isn't it.
Yeah. No. Maybe some other similar vegetables that are like not sweet but have kind of a bit of sweetness in them. Like carrots and beets aren't sweet like a berry, but as far as vegetables go, they have some, some carbohydrates. There's a little bit of sweetness in there.
Any idea what else I could try in that group?
I've no idea, like zucchini or something.
Yeah. Interesting.
I don't know.
I'll try anything because I'm just surprised at how different it ends up tasting usually. But the beetroot smells like beetroot.
Yeah.
Smells like very intense beetroot.
Yeah. Yeah, the carrot one, not as much. Yeah.
These two are currently my favorites. Yeah.